After 30 years, Billionaire comes home to his mom in tears. What he discovered is life-changing. David Carson stepped off the bus and into the small town that had birthed his dreams. The air was thick with familiarity, the scent of fresh-cut grass mingling with the smell of rain lingered in his memory like a sweet song. But as he stood on the cracked pavement, his heart sank. The vibrant front porch of his childhood home lay in disrepair, the once white paint now peeling like the memories he cherished. The once gorgeous yard was choked with weeds, a riot of nature devouring what had been a pride of Helen's life. He walked up the path, each step igniting flashes of laughter from Little League games and the warmth of his mother's hugs. But these memories felt heavy, weighted by the sight before him. When he entered the house and saw his mother, her eyes lined with worry and sadness, his heart tightened. Helen was on the brink of losing their home. He listened as she recounted the struggle she faced, bills piling up like unwanted guests, the loneliness wrapping around her like a suffocating cloak. A wave of guilt washed over him, sending him crashing down from his billionaire pedestal into a painful reality. David's wealth, accumulated through hard work and tech innovation, couldn't he cover the cracks in the roof of the house he cherished. He felt a deep longing to make things right. To restore the home where his mother had raised him, he resolved to dive back into community affairs. But as he stepped into the limelight, hoping to galvanize support, he felt the chill of suspicion. The neighbors who had once cheered for him now regarded him warily, their faces filled with misunderstanding. "You've forgotten where you came from," someone cried out during a town meeting. The accusation hung in the air like a dark cloud, brewing a storm of resentment. He sat and listened. Stories of struggle flooded the room, tales of disappointment and resilience. Each tale cut deep, igniting a flicker of humanity buried under layers of wealth. David realized that true success wasn't about the zeros in his bank account. It was about connection. Yet, the community, once his sanctuary, now felt closed off as they questioned his sincerity. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. David stood, heart racing. He opened his mouth, but the whispers around him escalated, doubt swirling like autumn leaves in the air. Would they see him as just another billionaire with a well-polished facade? Or as the scared little boy who once calloused his hands in the backyard, wearied but hopeful? His mother's hopeful gaze met his, a mixture of love and worry washing over her features. Could David find a way to bridge the gap between his past and his present? Would he ever be accepted back into the arms of the community that once nurtured him? With that burning question remaining unanswered, he could feel the weight of the world resting heavily on his shoulders, the tension palpable. Feeling the weight of uncertainty, David took a deep breath and forced himself to gather his thoughts. He needed to confront the room, to speak from his heart. I know I've changed. I've been away, I've been successful, yes, but I'm still the same person you remember. This place, you, my mom, it's all part of who I am, he said, voice trembling yet resolute. Silence enveloped the room, each eye trained on him, gauging the truth hidden behind his confident exterior. A woman at the back, her arms crossed defiantly, spoke up. You say that, but can you really understand what we've been through while you were off in your mansion? How can we trust you? Her question struck him like a punch to the gut. The hurt in her voice was palpable, reflective of the pain many in the room felt. I can't fully understand, but I want to listen. I want to help, he replied, feeling his throat tighten. I might have money, but that doesn't mean I'm immune to struggle. I want to rebuild together. The murmur shifted, curiosity beginning to replace hostility. A glimmer of hope flickered through David's heart. Perhaps there was still a way to reach them, to connect the fragmented pieces of his present with the town that had shaped his childhood. Days turned into weeks as David began to engage, actually, in the lives of those he had left behind. He helped out at the local food bank and joined community meetings, exchanging laughs and sharing stories his past intertwined with theirs. He learned of their hardships, each story cutting deeper than the last: the struggle to keep family farms afloat, losing loved ones, scrapping together every cent just to survive. During one visit, an elderly man approached him, looking down. "We've been waiting for someone to help, not just to give money. We need someone who cares," he said, sincerity flowing from his eyes. David felt a wave of emotion crash over him. Here was a chance not for proof of worth, but for connection. By the end of the month, David had organized a community cleanup event, bringing everyone together under the banner of restoration and hope. As they painted fences and cleared out the yard of a local playground, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing them in warmth. Laughter echoed through the streets. David smiled, sensing a bond slowly rebuilding, a mosaic piece together with shared experiences and collective sweat. But as the day wound down, doubt crept back in. Would this be enough to erase years of perceived neglect? As he looked at his mother, she stood proudly in the crowd, tears gleaming in her eyes. That reassurance became his beacon. Maybe connection was just the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David felt emboldened to ask the inevitable question, a proposal that could either heal wounds or tear them apart. He gathered everyone once more, keeping his voice steady yet urgent. "What if I started a foundation? We can address community needs directly, fund education, support local businesses, restore this town together." A murmur swept through the crowd. Some leaned in closer. What would they say? Would they welcome him with open arms, or would this new venture drive them apart? The path ahead was uncertain, but David was willing to face it head-on. As the night enveloped them, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start. The real battle lay ahead, one that would test his resolve and redefine who he was. Would the community rally around him? Or would they forever see him as a stranger in their midst? With the weight of those thoughts clinging to him, David prepared for an answer he was so desperately yearning to hear. The crowd held its collective breath, curiosity mingling with hesitation. David's heart raced, each beat matching the weight of their expectations. He surveyed their faces, searching for a glimmer of hope or maybe even doubt, anything to steer his faith one way or another. Then, a voice broke through the silence. It was the same woman who had challenged him that night in the meeting hall. "What is the catch?" she asked, her arms still crossed. David saw it all there in her eyes: years of hardship, mistrust, and the desperation for real change. "There's no catch," David insisted, his voice stronger now, fueled by determination. "I want to partner with you. This isn't just about money. It's about creating a future for all of us. Together, we can make a difference." A ripple spread through the crowd. Some exchanged glances, others whispered among themselves. David couldn't decipher if they were leaning toward support or skepticism. The fear of being burned again was palpable in the air, and he felt it wrapping around him like a vine, tightening with every second that passed. But then a man stepped forward, nodding slowly. "You've got big plans, David. But words don't heal wounds. Commitment does." His voice held authority, a quiet strength that commanded respect. "Absolutely," David replied, grateful for a new ally. "That's why I'd like to hold a town hall, an open forum, where we can discuss what is needed. I want to hear directly from each of you." A murmuration swelled among the people. David could see the flicker of intrigue cross some faces, and he seized the moment. "Let us set a date. Allow me to start this foundation as a community effort. This isn't just my mission, it's ours. Then he caught sight of his mother, standing at the back. She watched him with a pride that bolstered him further. Could he make them believe in him? Could he transform years of hurt into hope? He had to try. Days blended into long nights as David worked tirelessly. The initial response was cautious, but he pushed forward, drumming up enthusiasm at community meetings, writing pamphlets, and even setting up an online platform that allowed people to submit their ideas. He poured every ounce of energy into this, feeling a surge of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. But just as the momentum began to build, he faced a harrowing setback. One evening, David received a call that sent a chill down his spine. There has been a protest outside the town hall, the voice on the other end reported. People are saying you're just another rich guy trying to buy our trust with platitudes. Anger bubbled inside him. How could they not see? He wasn't looking to impose. He wanted to uplift. That night, he lay awake, wrestling with doubt. He could feel the weight of their nostalgia, their fear, all the memories they carried bearing down on him. Was this a battle he could win? The next day, he stood at the town hall. A crowd gathered before him, tension thick and alive. With every aching heartbeat, he reminded himself of his purpose. I'm not just asking for your trust. I'm here to earn it, he called out, his voice echoing in the silence. Let us start fresh together. Give me a chance to show you who I really am. As he spoke, he saw those guarded eyes soften slightly, an inkling of hope beginning to flicker. Would this moment change everything? Would they finally allow him back into the folds of their lives? But just as he felt a tentative connection starting to spark, someone shouted, "Prove it. Show us you're not just words." As the challenge hung in the air, David realized that this was more than just a proposal now, it was a promise to himself and to everyone watching. The question loomed, what could he do to truly prove his worth? And as he contemplated this, resolute in his decision, he knew something incredibly important lay ahead. He needed to face the hardest truth yet. Could he actually live up to the new expectations, or was he still the stranger they feared he was? David stood there, heart pounding, the crowd's energy shifting as their faces varied from skepticism to a quiet curiosity. He didn't have a rehearsed plan to win them over. All he had was the raw determination to make a connection, to transform his dreams into something real for the people he once called neighbors. How can I prove I'm different? He wondered. He felt like a small fish in an ocean of doubt, surrounded by a tide of angry voices and piercing scrutiny. But one thought cut through the confusion. He needed to take action, something tangible that spoke louder than his words. All right, he began, the words flowing out as if from some deep well of inspiration. You want proof? Let us make something happen right here, right now. The crowd hesitated, the challenge still lingering in the air, but David pressed on. Let us choose a project together. Something that can benefit us all. I want you to come up with ideas. I want to roll up my sleeves and help. One member of the crowd, a young woman with bright eyes, stepped forward. What kind of project? He looked at her, genuinely grateful for the shift in the atmosphere. How about a community garden? A place where we can grow food together, teach our kids, and strengthen our bonds? Excited whispers rippled through the crowd. The woman smiled, intrigued. And what if we want a playground for the kids or better sidewalks? Will you listen? Absolutely, David said, his tone earnest. Each of those ideas matters. All of them will make a difference. I'm here to partner with you. This isn't my vision, it's ours. With this new wave of enthusiasm, the crowd started to buzz with ideas, forgetting the protests and doubts for a moment. Plans were thrown around, and soon David was jotting down their suggestions, a smile creeping across his face as he felt their excitement take root. But as day faded into twilight, tension settled over him again. What if he couldn't deliver? What if they entered into another partnership, only to be let down once more? He thought of the years of trust lost, and the fragility of what he was trying to rebuild. Returning home that evening, he took a long walk through the town that had once been his world. Each building carried memories, from birthday parties to school days. Yet, to him now, they stood as reminders of what he had turned his back on. By the time he reached his mother's house, she was already waiting at the door, concern etched across her face. "David, you've been gone too long. Coming back is only the first step. What are you truly doing to help?" Her words pierced his heart. David knew she spoke from experience. The struggle they had endured together had shaped them. She believed in him, but could he believe in himself? "I'm trying to unite the community, Mom," he confessed, his voice trembling. "But what if they never trust me?" She took his hands in hers, warmth flooding through them. Her gaze was steady, filled with the understanding only a mother could provide. "Trust takes time. You have to show them you care. Actions speak louder than words, David." In that moment, something inside him clicked. He realized that showing up wasn't enough. He needed to dig deeper. He had to lead by example, working alongside the very community he wanted to uplift. He would dive into their ideas, sweat alongside them, and share in their struggles and triumphs until they all began to heal. A community garden was just the start, a symbol of the growth they could nourish together. As dawn broke the next day, David stood determined. He would show them how one act of kindness could branch out like the roots of a tree, intertwining their lives. But before he could take the leap, an urgent message arrived on his phone. A looming crisis threatened everything he had worked for. Could this new challenge uproot the tiny seeds of hope he had just planted, or would it be the catalyst for a true change? David's heart raced as he read the message, the weight of potential decisions pinning him in place. What would he do next? David stared at his phone, the screen blurring as the words swirled in his mind. An urgent message from the local council had just revealed a huge development project plan for the area, a commercial complex that would wipe out the community garden before it even had a chance to grow. Panic bubbled up inside him. All those plans, those dreams of reconnecting with his community, seemed to hang by a thread. He was filled with a mix of frustration and urgency. How could he let this happen? The idea of the garden was no longer just a vision, it was a lifeline. He could almost see the children laughing, the parents working side by side, the neighbors trading recipes for fresh vegetables. Anger ignited within him, and for the first time since his return, he felt the surge of something like purpose. Without a second thought, David rushed out the door and into the sunlight. The streets, still sleepy from the early hour, felt both familiar and foreign. He was no longer just a ghost wandering through his past. Now, he was a man on a mission. He would not let this slip away so easily. As he reached the town center, memories flooded him. He recalled all those days spent riding bikes with friends, the laughter, the games. Those days reminded him of what he stood to lose, not just a patch of land, but the spirit of the community he had thought he could rebuild. It wasn't just about him. It was about everyone. He gathered his breath and turned to where the crowd had stood yesterday. This time, he envisioned them alongside him, standing against this new threat. It would take more than just him. He needed their voices, their energy. David took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. "We need to have a meeting," he shouted into the air, not caring who heard him. "Everyone, we need to come together and talk about this development, about how we can stop it." The few people who were out and about looked up, some heads nodding, others confused. But he didn't wait for a full response. He quickly pulled out his phone again and began sending out messages, text blasts, social media posts, whatever it took to rally the community. One by one, people began to appear. Some faces were familiar, but many were new. This was the moment of truth. David had to present not just the problem, but the solution, a way forward together. As the sun climbed higher, David stood before a growing crowd, his heart pounding like it had the day before. "Listen," he called, raising his hands. "We have a situation. A developer wants to take away the land we're hoping to turn into a garden, a space for us all to grow, to thrive. But we can fight this." There were murmurs of concern, but also a glimmer of shared hope. "What can we do?" someone shouted from the back. That was the spark he needed. "We need to organize a petition. We need to show our strength." His mind raced. "And we can hold a community event, a festival. A chance to show what we want for our neighborhood." He felt the anticipation build in the crowd. What if they actually rallied together? What if this became more than just words? As their chatter grew, so did David's heart. The community garden was no longer just his idea, it was theirs, and if they united, they could overcome this threat. Then, as the crowd began to brainstorm, an older woman stepped forward, her voice steady despite her hands shaking. "It's not just a garden we need. We need a place where we can gather, reignite our spirit. Can we work on that too?" A wave of agreement rippled through the group, igniting new ideas and possibilities. David felt a smile spread across his face. They were finally connecting, transforming anxiety into action. But suddenly, a loud commotion broke through the assembly. David turned his head, dreading what he might see. A small group of men in suits approached, brandishing clipboards and an air of authority that darkened the atmosphere. "Ladies and gentlemen," one of them announced with an air of arrogance, "we're here to inform you that this development is going through, regardless of your little gathering here today." A hush fell over the crowd. David's heart sank. Was all this hope already being overshadowed? Would this be yet another failure to add to his list? Determined to stand his ground, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenge was looming. The tension in the air was palpable. Would David have the strength to rally his community when it was most needed? How would he respond to those men in suits, whose words could shatter the hopes he had just ignited? David squared his shoulders, his heart pounding, as the men in suits continued their uninterested gazes over the crowd, as if deciding which piece of land was next to be devoured by asphalt and stone. He felt the surge of anger rise in him again, an almost electric pulse of urgency. There had to be a way to fight back. "Excuse me," David called out, his voice rising above the low murmur of disbelief. "Who gave you the right to decide what happens here? This is our home." The lead man in the gray suit adjusted his glasses, looking bemused. "We have all the necessary permissions. The council approved this for the betterment of the community." "For whom?" David shot back, stepping forward. "You think that a shopping nexus will benefit the people here? We need green spaces, not more concrete. Our children need a safe, beautiful place to play." Some members of the crowd began nodding, their initial shock fading into anger. David felt the tide turn, the energy shifting with each voice raised in agreement. This was the spark he needed. "Listen," he continued, gesturing for silence. "We're not simply going to stand by while our homes are sold off to the highest bidder. We're going to make our voices heard, loud and clear. We will gather signatures, share our stories, host events that show what this community means to us." A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd, and David could sense their collective resolve. The men in suits exchanged uneasy glances. "Is this really the best you can do?" The lead man scoffed. "We'll be starting construction in a month. You have no power here." David felt a heat rise in his chest, but he refused to let their arrogance intimidate him. "No power? Look around you. We are the power. We are the voice of this neighborhood. People are tired of developers coming in, tearing down our history without a care. We know what we need. Together, we can show you that." The crowd responded with a chorus of agreement, voices overlapping, energizing the moment. David's mind raced. This wasn't just about a garden anymore. It was a stand against everything that had eroded their community over the years. Just then, someone from the crowd shouted, "Let us organize a rally. We can show up at the town meeting next week." The idea took off like wildfire, with others adding their suggestions: social media campaigns, door knocking, flyers, anything to spread the word. David could hardly believe the momentum building. Each contribution felt like pouring fuel on a fire that had been smoldering for too long. Just as he began to think that maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off, one of the suited men pulled out his phone. "This is a waste of time. You'll be ignored," he said dismissively, walking away with his colleagues, their clipped conversation retreating through the crowd's roaring enthusiasm. David's heart raced, but there was no time to waste on their dismissal. He turned back to the gathering, their faces lighting up with possibilities, and he felt the ember of hope stoke into flames. "We can do this. We have a chance." As the crowd buzzed with excitement, he felt like a conductor leading an orchestra of dreams into action. But just as the thought of victory began to settle in, he noticed the older woman, the one who had pushed for more than a garden, her face contorted with worry. "What happens if they bulldoze the land before we can do anything?" she asked, her voice trembling. The sight of fear echoed across the crowd, like a wave of reality crashing into their newfound hope. David's heart sank once more. Could they really work fast enough? Time stood still as he contemplated the weight of her question. How far were they willing to go? A clock was ticking somewhere in the distance, and every moment felt like sand slipping through his fingers. What if it all fell apart? Determined to turn this moment into strength, David clutched a handful of vibrant soil from the garden they wanted to protect, raising it high. "This is us. This is what we're fighting for." Would that be enough to shore up their resolve, or would despair creep back in? They were not just defending land, they were safeguarding memories, dreams, and a future. But even as they rallied, David felt an unsettling fear lingering in the back of his mind. What secrets lay hidden in the council's plans? What would he uncover if he dug deeper? As the crowd erupted in agreement, frothy excitement bubbling over, David realized he had only scratched the surface. The fight was just beginning, but what other obstacles lay in his path? David took a deep breath, feeling the soil slip from his fingers. The surge of adrenaline faded slightly, replaced by a whirlwind of thoughts. He had a mountain to climb, and yet the energy of the crowd was a lifeline. They were ready to fight. Yet doubt gnawed at him. Could they really make a difference? "Listen up, everyone!" he shouted, cutting through the murmurs that had begun to settle. "We need to meet and plan. Organize ourselves. It's not enough to just be angry, we need strategy. We need allies." He spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Neighbors with graying hair, faces lined with the stories of their lives, whose homes were attached to the land in ways that could never be measured. One man stepped forward, a veteran with a grim demeanor. "I want to help. I've seen too many things stolen from us. This isn't just about a garden, it's about our dignity." His voice was steady, a declaration that resonated with the crowd. Exactly. David felt a surge of hope. But we have to come together. Let us create a community board. We need representatives from every block to gather feedback, ideas, and share exactly what this land means to us. We can build a website, hold meetings, get the media involved. We need to show the city we're organized and united. Excitement charged the atmosphere again, buzzing like a live wire. Hands shot up as people shouted out their ideas, their fears, and their hopes. "We should make signs," cried a teenager, and another added, "How about a petition?" David raised his hands to quiet the crowd. "We'll do it. Every idea counts. But we have to start formally. We need everyone who can help to show up tomorrow at the community center at 6. Bring your thoughts, your stories, your passion." As the crowd dispersed, David felt a bittersweet mixture of triumph and uncertainty. They had made a stand, But this battle was bigger than he had anticipated. Were they up for what lay ahead? He walked home through the neighborhood, each step heavy with contemplation. The sun dipped low as the sky turned a soft orange-pink. The familiar sights of home felt comforting yet sour. The gnawing worry about the construction loomed like dark clouds, unavoidable and oppressive. His mind wandered back to the old woman's question. What if they didn't succeed in stopping the bulldozers? The thought haunted him, like shadows creeping along the sidewalks. He realized then that it wasn't just land they were fighting for. It was the memories wrapped up in those trees, that park bench where kids played, and the community gatherings that defined their lives. That evening, he spread out a map of the neighborhood on the table, pinning notes and photographs with memories, breathing life into the fight ahead. Each face in the photos was a reminder of what they stood to lose. What would they do without this place, their haven from the rush of the world? As he pushed his chair back, ready to rest, he noticed something glimmering in the corner of his eye, a newspaper clipping that had been tucked away at the back of a drawer. He picked it up, his heart racing as he read the headline. Council approves new development plan. The article revealed not just plans that would ruin their gardens, but something more sinister lurking behind the scenes, something that might connect the pieces of greed that threatened their home. David's pulse quickened. He knew now that if they were to fight this thing, they needed the truth, and he was determined to uncover it. But would the new revelations unite them, or create deeper rifts among the community? The clock was ticking, and every second counted. David barely slept that night. The weight of what he had uncovered pressed against his chest like a stone. The clippings tugged at his thoughts, replaying in his mind. The council's approval felt like betrayal, as if a well-oiled machine was moving forward without regard for the community that called this place home. By morning, the sun streamed in his window, cutting through the shadows of worry. He fixed a strong cup of coffee and returned to the map spread out on the table, noticing the vibrant colors of their park, the names listed on the notes, each one a dream tied to the land. This was no longer just about homes or gardens. It was about history, identity. Rise and shine, his neighbor Pauline chirped as she knocked on his door. In her mid-60s, Pauline always wore bright floral dresses that seemed to inject life into any room. Her joyful demeanor was a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling in David's heart. Hey, Pauline. You're just in time to help me brainstorm. She stepped inside, peering over the map, her brows knitting together. This looks serious, David. What have you found? As he explained about the article, he watched her expression shift. The worry etched across her face mirrored his own fears. It's worse than we thought, she said softly. If they're planning to tear down the park, there's no telling what else they're willing to sacrifice. The urgency of the situation drummed in his ears. They needed to mobilize the community more than ever. We have to dig deeper. Maybe this goes beyond the construction. There could be other players involved. Pauline nodded, her eyes lighting up with determination. Let us arrange a small meeting today. If we start with our closest neighbors, we can spread the word. Maybe we can find people who know more about this development plan. With renewed vigor, David grabbed his phone and started texting every number he had. The response was electric. People began replying almost immediately. One by one, his neighbors expressed their willingness to join him, investing their time and hope in the fight. As the clock ticked closer to 6, he felt the weight lift slightly. The community center hummed with anticipation when he arrived, voices overlapping, creating a tapestry of shared concern. Thank you, everyone, David began as the room settled. We're facing a massive challenge, and I believe that together we can not only protect our homes, but fight for our community. Today, we dig into these plans and see how deep this goes. He could feel the energy shift, a palpable sense of purpose echoing through the crowd. As they broke into smaller groups, David's heart raced. Conversations ignited, ideas spun like fireworks in the night sky. Someone proposed organizing a rally. Another suggested contacting local reporters. In the corner, a young woman named Mia approached him with a determined look. "David, I found something else. It's not just the development plan. There is a connection to some major companies. They're investing in the area just to corner the market. This isn't just a low-level project. It's bigger." A chill ran through David. This was the tip of the iceberg. They were not only battling for their land, they were entangled in something that threatened lives beyond their own. "Thank you for bringing this to me. We need to expose them, Mia. This can't be just another story swept under the rug," David replied, adrenaline pushing him forward. As nights turned into days, the fire of resistance grew. Each person brought new energy and ideas, creating alliances more potent than he could have imagined. Hope intertwined with resolve, forming a bond that held them all together, but the deeper they dug, the more issues began to surface. Distrust, hesitation. Old feuds rose among neighbors who had once been friends. Could they maintain unity amidst the chaos? There was so much at stake, and David now realized this was not just about fighting external forces. It was about healing the very community they sought to protect. Staring at the map, he felt an unsettling question loom. Could they rise above their differences, or would their fight fracture the unity they desperately needed? He took a deep breath, sensing that converging paths lay ahead, some leading toward a brighter future, others tempting them into darker depths. But uncertainty became a motivator. And just then, a loud crashing noise broke through the buzzing conversations. David turned as the doors flew open, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the evening sun, a corporate attorney, someone they'd seen in photos, someone who might hold all the cards in this game. His heart quickened. What would this surprise bring? Was it a threat, an opportunity, or a warning? Each outcome could change everything. The attorney stepped inside with an air of confidence that felt almost like arrogance. He wore a tailored suit, crisp and sharp, and his briefcase looked like it could crush the dreams of the people in the room. David's instincts screamed at him to react, to confront this intruder who had the power to upend everything they were fighting for. "Evening, folks. I apologize for the abrupt entrance, but I believe this gathering requires my attention," the man said, scanning the room, his eyes landing on David. "Name S. Carter Langston. I represent the interests behind the development you've all been rallying against." David felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. And what interests would those be? Our community's concerns? Or just profit margins? Carter chuckled lightly, as if David's question was amusing. "Oh, it's adorable how you think this is about the community. It's about progress, about development that the city has been yearning for. You must understand, these are choices that broader economic trends dictate." The scorn in his voice conjured a wave of murmurs from the crowd. David glanced around. He could see the rise of desperation in some faces, the flicker of doubt in others. Was it possible this man had the power to sway them against each other? "What you don't get is that this community is not just a dot on your development map," David pushed back, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "We have history here. Families have roots here." Murmurs of agreement rolled through the audience. Carter waved a hand dismissively, the sheen of charm faltering slightly. "Sentimentality is charming, but it doesn't pay the bills. You ought to consider what will come with the new developments, new jobs, better facilities." "Better for whom?" a voice shouted from the back. The elderly Mr. Thompson rose to his feet, indignation sharpening his tone. "Not for us. It means displacing families and leaving behind a hollow shell of what we had." "This meeting is not about emotions," Carter retorted, the exterior of his confidence cracking. "This is business. If it goes through, you'll just end up being left out of the conversation entirely." Mia stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "People aren't just numbers in your ledger books, Mr. Langston. We want to be bullied. David felt the momentum shift. He couldn't ignore the rush of energy coursing through his veins. Perhaps this was their chance to turn the tide. What if we challenge you? We're prepared to go to the press. Let the public see your true colors. This isn't just about a plan. It's about people. Carter flinched, his expression betraying annoyance. Good luck with that. But be warned, there are other ways to handle a protest, and plenty of forces behind us. You may be confident now, but the stakes could turn quite grim. A silence blanketed the room as David stared him down, weighing the risks. The panic on some faces by now was palpable. Were they ready for this fight? Were they ready to risk their homes, their peace? Grim as your threats may sound, we stand united, David said firmly, his heart racing. We'll expose your operations. Just watch. People deserve to know what is happening here. As Carter gathered his belongings, the air buzzed with unresolved tension, words hanging like clouds before a storm. He gave a curt nod and stepped backwards, pausing at the door with a smirk. Make it a campaign. You'll still lose. But hey, at least it'll be entertaining. The doors slammed shut behind him, leaving an eerie anticipation hanging around them. David looked at his neighbors, fear and determination warring in their expressions. The room felt charged, like the moment before a thunderclap. What now? Someone asked, and it solidified the mounting anxiety. We prepare, David replied, voice steady, clenching his fists. But we can't just push back, we need to gather every piece of information we can. We need witnesses, documents, everything. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Yet, David could sense a thin thread of crisis beginning to unravel among them. Would they really find unity against the threat now looming over them? The fight wasn't just for the land anymore. It was for the very soul of their community. And in that moment of clarity, as the crowd rallied around him, David felt hope ignite like a match in darkness. But deep within, uncertainty lurked, whispering truths that could either bind or break them. The real battle was yet to come, and they would have to stand strong or lose everything. What had they truly awakened? And at what cost would their resistance come? The tension in the room was palpable. David could feel the weight of every anxious heartbeat around him. They had faced down a formidable foe in Carter Langston, but now, a new challenge loomed. Their next move would not just define their fight for the garden. It would weave together the very fabric of their community's future. Look, we can't act on impulse, David said, addressing the murmurs echoing back to him. We need a plan. We need to gather information legally. If we want to go against them, we need to know who we're up against. The crowd quieted, and as the seconds ticked by, a sense of unity washed over the room. The table of ideas David had spread before them now felt like a seedbed, nurturing the spirit of collaboration that had begun to sprout among them. David felt a surge of motivation. I want to organize a task force, he declared. We'll break into teams: documentation, press relations, community outreach. We have to show the city we're serious. As eyes lit up, hands shot up in agreement. The reaction fueled David further. Mia, you already have leads on the companies behind this. Can you expand on that? Absolutely, she replied. If we dig into their financials and talk to everyone who has been impacted, we can create a narrative. One that illustrates what we stand to lose if they move ahead. Individual voices began to blend together, their whispers turning into a collaborative roar. The initial seedlings of fear transformed into a growing belief. David could almost see the potential blooming in their eyes. Hours flew by as they worked into the night, formulating strategies, gathering stories, and preparing for an upcoming town meeting. The energy was intoxicating. It felt like the pulse of the town was syncing in rhythm with their goals. One couple shared how the park had served as the backdrop for countless family memories. A teenager sketched out an idea for social media campaigns to raise awareness. This is bigger than just a garden, David affirmed, his voice full of unwavering confidence. We're standing up for our history, our homes, and a future for the next generation. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of collective determination crashing against the walls. However, as the sun set on their hopeful productivity, doubt crept back into David's heart. Could they really outmaneuver the forces that had the city's ear? Would they garner the town's support, or would the old divides begin to surface again under pressure? Just then, Helen entered the room, her face lit with pride. "David," she said softly, her voice steady as she approached, "I've never seen this community rally like this before. There is something special happening." He looked deep into her eyes. "Mom, it feels like we're finally coming together. But there's no denying it, this fight will test us. I just hope they see that I'm not just the boy who left, but the man who has returned to uplift us all." Days raced ahead as they coordinated events, each step igniting sparks of hope through the town. Posters decorated walls, social media exploded with support, and old friendships began to mend. But then came the day of the town meeting. David stood at the podium facing a crowd that stretched well beyond the walls of the community center. As he glanced around, he saw friendly faces, but also strangers, people who had hoped to reshape their town yet remained skeptical of him. Today is about standing united not just for the garden, but for everything we cherish in this community, he proclaimed, his heart thumping with urgency. This development doesn't listen to our stories. It erases them. Gasps echoed as David began to recount the tales shared with him over their meetings. The elderly woman's memories of playing in the park years before, children who giggled while riding bikes, festivals that brought everyone together. As he spoke, the atmosphere shifted. People listened, each story resonating like a drumbeat of community and shared love. But as he wrapped up his speech, he saw Carter Langston seated across the room, his expression unreadable. In that moment, David realized that the fight wasn't merely about halting the concrete jungle. It was about the stitches that wove their lives together. It was about renewal, proving to each other that they could reclaim their space as a united force. As David concluded, his heart surged with determination. "So I call on each one of you to lend your voice to the movement. Stand with us not behind money or profit, but for your neighbors." Suddenly, a wave of fervor emerged, with people rising to their feet, clapping, chanting, the room electrified by possibility. A collective spirit of resistance filled the air as new faces stepped forward, determined to join the fight. And in that moment, as David saw their eyes light up with newfound excitement, genuine hope blossomed in his heart. They might have been cautious days before, but they had ignited a passion strong enough to shake the very foundations of the city. The fight was far from over, but united, they stood ready and determined to rise against the storm of uncertainty. Together, they were more than just a collection of neighbors. They were a family anchored back to their shared roots. As the meeting adjourned, David stepped down from the podium. But the noise of hope wouldn't fade away. He had inspired them not just to dream, but to act, and he made a silent promise to continue fighting for the life he had once known. They were in this together now, and regardless of what lay ahead, at that moment, anything felt possible. And that, he realized, was everything. This isn't just the end. It's a beginning. A call and upward surge toward the crescendo of change that hung before them like the most glorious sunrise. They would reclaim not just a garden, but a community, breathing life back into its roots with each step they took. Now, the journey was theirs, redefined, and David stood beside them, as one. But here's where you come in. You need to subscribe now to keep up with the powerful stories and transformations we share. This is the moment to show your support. If you're moved by this story, leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this community alive. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this incredible journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation unfold. Your engagement matters.